Everywhere I look in the Danziger Chapel tonight, I see this week's Torah portion. I see the blessing that I offered on the beautiful Besser children, or even looking in the back row and seeing Howard and Debbie Siegel, their daughters, when they became Benot Mitzvah, or when anybody is married, or just before this service, when I ate dinner at 4:45 and blessed my daughter Julia, the only one home tonight. This is the week when the Torah records the best blessing the Jewish people know. It's known as the priestly benediction, or the Birkat Kohanim, Numbers 6:22 through 24. In English, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. That's the English many of you know by heart. In the Torah, it's composed of 3 Hebrew lines, and each line contains 2 verbs with the name of God in the middle. The first line has 3 Hebrew words, the second has 5, and the third line has 7, the numerical symbol of creation, perfection, and completion. And even as the length of the verses grow from 3 to 5 to 7, so the rabbis teach us that each of the 3 lines contains a blessing more generous than the one preceding. The first blessing, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Those are the 3 words. May the Lord bless you and keep you. What's that for? Material well-being. We ask God to favor us with sustenance, with prosperity, and thereby freeing us from hunger and distress. But the rabbis, even back then, pointed out, and we would say today, that too often in our society, we make the mistake of believing that material prosperity, money, is the ultimate blessing, the final reward, when in fact, we can all too easily become possessed by our possessions. So in Judaism, material prosperity is not an evil. It's a special blessing. However, it's a blessing that can be dangerous when it can and does affect our families, our friendships, our work, our love. It can affect our ethics, and it can even affect our feelings of self-worth. As one unemployed congregant, a man this week I met with, I tried to convince him that the loss of his net worth is not a measure of his self-worth. One of the ongoing challenges, I think, for not just American Jews, but for Americans, regardless of the political games, is balancing our lives as carefully as we balance our checkbooks. That's blessing 1. And that's why it doesn't end with blessing 1, because the second line with 5 words is considered far greater. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Those are the 5 words. May the light of God's face shine upon you and be gracious to you. This second line refers to spiritual blessing, the enlightenment and wisdom which comes from focusing on what really matters through learning a life of ethical and ritual mitzvot, which are meant to uplift our lives with sacred meaning. What remains compelling about Judaism is the meaning it can add to life, its structure of belonging that enhances moments of joy, and for some of you saying Kaddish tonight, consoles in times of sorrow. Judaism, the inherited wisdom of a tradition that has always valued the life of the mind in the service of the good. The link to that source of strength we find sometimes within us and beyond us, that three-letter word we call God. So what's the third and final line? How can you get higher than that? Well, the process reaches its high point with the blessing of a life at one with everything. Yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Those are the 7 words. May God's face be lifted toward you and grant you shalom. Now, shalom doesn't just mean hello, goodbye, as in shalom, y'all. Shalom means completion, wholeness, like a circle, perfection. And it is upon shalom that the beautiful 3-5-7 blessing comes to rest, since Jewish tradition believes that the end of all blessings is peace. And now, before I close, one of the most difficult questions I was ever asked, which always comes from the kids in our religious school. They're the ones who have they ask the tough questions. Kids always ask the best and sometimes most difficult questions, especially when it comes to life and death. So God's holy name appears in each of the 3 lines, right? Besides God, though, the only term repeated in the blessing is the word panim, face. We ask God to cause his face to shine upon us and then to lift up, in the old prayer book we said countenance, but it's face. Lift up his face to us. Does God have a face? That's the question the kid in Temple Religious School asked me my first year in Memphis, and one which they don't address very well in rabbinical school. You're just supposed to accept the fact that God has a panim. It's a metaphor, of course. Some of the things in life that are the most real are the things you can't see. Show me love. You can't see it. Max may be, I don't know, too old or too young to remember. There was a movie, Pocahontas, do you remember it? The Colors of the Wind. You can't see the wind. And then one of the kids said, yes, you can, in the movie Pocahontas. I said, well, that was a movie, but some of the things that mean the most you can't see. Love, the feelings. God has no body, no nose to smell, no voice to speak, certainly no face in a physical sense. So when the Bible uses those terms, it's using physical terms to describe the unphysical. That's when I lost the kids, because I didn't understand that. So what do we mean by a face, whether God's or ours? Here's the kicker. The Hebrew word for face, panim. You ever hear people say, you have a nice punum? That's the word face. Guess what? It's in the plural. Faces in Hebrew always come in pairs. 2 people meet face to face. The word face is about an encounter with another. My face comes into being when it meets another face, when I really stand in the presence and see the other. Humans need other humans to be fully present. We must be able to see one another, to be open while confront. Our very being is defined in relationship to others. That's why face to face is vital. Husbands and wives need and deserve time with one another without distraction. Children have a need for a parent's ongoing presence. Even in business settings, I'm told, there's nothing more frustrating than talking to someone who is preoccupied by papers on the desk, texting, phone interruptions, other distractions. People deserve our presence and full attention, and so it is with God. God doesn't have a face in a literal sense, but God has a presence. There are moments in our lives when we feel we are living in the very presence of God, when God's presence is shining upon us, when God lifts up that presence upon us and brings us peace. Or as Broadway put it, to love another person is to see the face of God. So now you know the background of that blessing said every Friday night, every bar mitzvah, every wedding, every special time. And with that, I pray that each of us will have sustenance, go beyond that to the spiritual, and arrive at shalom. And let us say,